Have you ever looked at a fossil and wondered what the world was like when it was alive? Every bone, every footprint is a whisper from a lost age, when giant beasts ruled the land and strange creatures swam in ancient seas. Some vanished in fiery cataclysms, others faded quietly as the world changed around them. Extinction isn't just about loss, it's the story of life, survival, and the fragile balance that keeps it all together. So tonight, we're diving deep into Earth's forgotten past, uncovering 100 incredible facts about extinct animals that once ruled our planet. Get ready to travel through time and meet the legends that nature left behind. Fact 1. The first extinction event. When life nearly vanished. Imagine the entire planet holding its breath, oceans turning toxic, skies darkening, and nearly all life quietly disappearing. That's not a movie plot. It's something that actually happened long before humans ever existed. Scientists call it the first great extinction, and it reshaped the future of life on Earth. Billions of years ago, Earth was already a busy world. Simple organisms filled the oceans, bacteria, algae, tiny creatures we'd never see without a microscope. Everything seemed stable, but stability doesn't last forever. Around 2.4 billion years ago, something incredible happened. The Great Oxygenation Event. Tiny cyanobacteria began releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. It sounds like a good thing. After all, we breathe oxygen, but back then, it was poison. The planet's early life forms couldn't survive it. Oxygen rusted the oceans, froze the planet, and wiped out most of the species alive at that time. The world became a graveyard of microscopic life, but in that destruction, something new began. That oxygen later made complex life possible. The same air we breathe today came from an extinction that almost ended everything. It's wild to think that one of Earth's most important transformations came from something that looked like a disaster. Life was fragile, yet somehow it adapted, evolved, and started again. Every extinction, as dark as it seems, has shaped what comes next, and this one set the stage for everything else in the story of life on Earth. Fact 2. Trilobites, the ancient rulers of the sea. If you could dive into the ocean 500 million years ago, you wouldn't see fish or whales, you'd see trilobites everywhere. These strange armoured creatures crawled along the seafloor, ruled ancient waters, and witnessed the rise and fall of entire worlds before dinosaurs ever appeared. Trilobites looked like little alien tanks, hard shells, segmented bodies, and eyes made of crystal. Some were tiny, barely the size of your fingernail. Others grew longer than your arm. They were survivors too, adapting to different seas for almost 270 million years. That's longer than mammals, birds, and even dinosaurs lasted. But what's really fascinating is how advanced they were. Their eyes, the oldest known in the fossil record, were built from pure calcite, giving them sharp underwater vision. They molted their shells like crabs do today, leaving behind fossils that now tell their story in stone. Then came the Permian extinction, the Great Dying. Nearly everything in the oceans vanished, and trilobites were among the casualties. It's strange to imagine a world that had known them for so long suddenly losing them forever, yet their legacy remains in every fossil collection. A reminder that even the greatest rulers of their time eventually fall. Still, trilobites represent the beauty of evolution, adaptable, enduring, and endlessly fascinating. They might be gone, but in a way they never stop teaching us about the resilience of life itself. Fact 3. Dunkleosteus, the armoured fish with a bone-crushing bite. Before sharks ruled the seas, there was Dunkleosteus, a prehistoric monster with jaws like a steel trap. This thing wasn't just big, it was terrifying. Imagine a fish the size of a bus covered in armour swimming through murky Devonian waters, ready to bite anything in half. Unlike most fish, Dunkleosteus didn't have teeth. It had sharp, bony plates that worked like shears. With one snap it could crush through armour or bone. Its bite was estimated to be stronger than that of a crocodile or even a T-Rex. You can almost picture it lurking in the deep, motionless for a moment, and then, snap, its prey never stood a chance. But what's equally interesting is that it lived during a time when life in the oceans was exploding with diversity. Coral reefs were forming, early sharks were emerging, and ecosystems were getting more complex. Dunkleosteus sat right at the top of that food chain, a reminder that power has always found a way to exist in nature. And yet, even this armoured titan couldn't survive forever. About 360 million years ago, a mysterious extinction event swept through the seas. Oxygen levels dropped, food chains collapsed, and Dunkleosteus vanished. For millions of years, no creature ruled quite like it again. Its fossils still show the jawlines of dominance, proof that even in death, power leaves its mark. Fact 4. Megalograptus, the sea scorpion. Larger than a man. Now imagine standing waist-deep in ancient water, and something brushes your leg. You look down, and there it is. A sea scorpion the size of a man, claws snapping, armour glinting in the sunlight. That's Megalograptus, one of the largest arthropods that ever lived. It's almost hard to believe, but hundreds of millions of years ago, giant scorpions and their relatives ruled shallow seas and riverbeds. Megalograptus wasn't a monster in the horror movie sense, but to anything smaller it absolutely was. It used its long pincers to snatch prey, maybe trilobites, maybe fish, and drag them into its crushing grasp. Back then, oxygen levels were higher, and without large land predators, arthropods could grow huge. Megalograptus took full advantage of that. Its size wasn't just for show, it was an evolutionary experiment in dominance. But like so many prehistoric creatures, it eventually disappeared. Changes in climate, competition, and shifting oceans wiped it out. Still, its fossils remind us of a time when Earth's balance allowed things that seem impossible today, a world where giant sea scorpions hunted across the shallows, kings of their forgotten kingdom. Sometimes, when people say the ocean hides monsters, I think of Megalograptus, because once it really did. Fact 5. Dimetrodon, the sail-backed predator before dinosaurs. Everyone thinks Dimetrodon was a dinosaur, but here's the twist. It wasn't. It actually lived millions of years before the first dinosaurs appeared. Picture a reptile with sharp teeth, short legs, and a massive sail rising from its back. That was Dimetrodon, a predator ahead of its time. Its sail wasn't for decoration. Scientists think it helped regulate body temperature, like a built-in solar panel. In the morning, it might have stood still, letting the sun warm its blood before setting out to hunt. Once ready, Dimetrodon ruled its world, fierce, adaptable, and smart enough to stay on top. What's even more surprising is that Dimetrodon is more closely related to mammals than to reptiles or dinosaurs. That means, in a strange way, it's part of our own evolutionary story. It shows that long before fur, milk, or warm blood, there were creatures experimenting with what it meant to survive on land. Eventually, climate shifts and competition pushed Dimetrodon to extinction, clearing the path for dinosaurs to take over. But in its time, it was the ultimate symbol of change, a bridge between cold-blooded reptiles and warm-blooded mammals. So the next time someone calls Dimetrodon a dinosaur, remember, it walked the earth before dinosaurs ever dreamed of existing. It was nature's first draft of something truly extraordinary. Fact 6. The Permian extinction. The great dying that wiped out 90% of species. Imagine walking through a world that feels wrong. The air thick, the ground cracked, the oceans turning black. Then one day, everything just stops. That's what the Permian extinction was like. The single worst catastrophe in Earth's history. About 250 million years ago, nearly 90% of all life vanished. Nothing before or since has come close. It began quietly. Giant volcanoes in what's now Siberia started erupting, not for days or weeks, but for millions of years. Lava poured over vast regions, releasing carbon dioxide that trapped heat in the atmosphere. Oceans lost oxygen, the sky filled with ash, and acid rain fell like poison. Forests burned, coral reefs dissolved. Even insects, creatures that usually survive everything, disappeared almost completely. If you were a trilobite, that was the end of your story. Reptiles, fish, plants, all gone or barely hanging on. The world's ecosystem collapsed. For a time, Earth was almost silent. And yet, from that silence came rebirth. New species slowly evolved, building a different world, one that would eventually give rise to dinosaurs and, much later, us. It's eerie to think the planet has already come this close to losing everything. The Permian reminds us that life is resilient, but not invincible. Fact 7. Ichthyosaurs, the dolphin-like reptiles of ancient oceans. If you saw an ichthyosaur swimming past today, you might mistake it for a dolphin. Sleek body, pointed snout, fast and graceful. But this was no mammal. It was a marine reptile, and for millions of years it ruled the prehistoric seas. Ichthyosaurs started out as land reptiles that returned to the ocean, adapting perfectly to marine life. They gave birth to live young instead of laying eggs, had big eyes for deep-sea hunting, and some species grew longer than a school bus. They weren't built for terror like sharks, they were built for speed. Their bodies sliced through the water like torpedoes, chasing fish and squid in schools. They lived during the age of dinosaurs but had their own empire beneath the waves, and just like modern whales, they came in different shapes and sizes, from small hunters to massive predators with jaws full of teeth. But over time, oceans changed, competition increased, and the ichthyosaurs disappeared around 90 million years ago. Their fossils, beautifully preserved with outlines of soft tissue, show how sophisticated they were, a perfect experiment in evolution. They proved that when nature finds a good design, it tends to repeat it. Dolphins may rule the seas today, but ichthyosaurs did it first. Fact 8. Plesiosaurs, long-necked hunters of Jurassic seas. You've probably seen that classic image, a long neck stretching above the water, a reptilian head peeking out like something from a myth. That's the plesiosaur, one of the most elegant predators to ever swim the oceans. Its body looked almost impossible. A small head, massive flippers, and a neck that sometimes stretched over 20 feet long. It moved through the water like a bird gliding through air, using its 4 fins in perfect coordination. No other animal swam quite like it. But despite their strange looks, plesiosaurs were efficient hunters. Some chased fish with lightning speed, while others lay still, waiting to strike. Their long necks let them sneak close without scaring prey, almost like underwater snakes. Fossils suggest they were air breathers, surfacing like whales to take a breath before diving again. Mothers may have given birth to a single large baby, much like modern dolphins do, a rare trait for reptiles. They lived alongside dinosaurs but never competed with them. Their kingdom was the sea. And while legends like the Loch Ness Monster borrow from their image, the real plesiosaurs vanished 66 million years ago during the same disaster that ended the dinosaurs. Still, whenever people talk about ancient sea monsters, it's usually their silhouette we imagine, long, graceful, and unforgettable. Fact 9. Mosasaurs, the marine reptiles that terrorized the Cretaceous. If the ocean had nightmares, mosasaurs would be in them. These were the ultimate marine predators of the late Cretaceous, gigantic reptiles with jaws lined with sharp, interlocking teeth. Imagine a Komodo dragon crossed with a crocodile, then stretched to 50 feet long and dropped into the ocean. Mosasaurs weren't dinosaurs. They were actually relatives of snakes and monitor lizards. They used powerful tails to propel themselves forward and double-hinged jaws to swallow prey whole. Turtles, sharks, even smaller mosasaurs. They ruled the seas while T-Rex ruled the land. Their fossils have been found on every continent, including places that are now deserts. One discovery even showed traces of their scales, giving a glimpse of what they really looked like, smooth, streamlined, and terrifyingly fast. Then came the asteroid impact that ended the Cretaceous. The oceans boiled, sunlight vanished, and mosasaurs disappeared almost overnight. For millions of years they had been unbeatable, until nature pressed the reset button. It's strange to think that the ocean, which once belonged to monsters like these, now belongs to whales. But every time a big shadow moves under the waves, it's easy to imagine that somewhere, deep down, a little piece of the mosasaur's legacy still lurks. Fact 10. The flying giants, pterosaurs that ruled the skies before birds. Before birds ever flapped a wing, pterosaurs had already claimed the skies. They were the world's first flying vertebrates, real-life dragons with wingspans that could stretch longer than a small plane. Some were tiny, darting over beaches. Others, like Quetzalcoatl, stood as tall as a giraffe when on the ground. Their wings were made of skin stretched over a single elongated finger, a design so strange it almost shouldn't have worked, but it did, brilliantly. They soared over ancient coastlines diving for fish, gliding on thermal winds and nesting on cliffs. Some had crests on their heads, bright, colourful, maybe used to attract mates. Pterosaurs weren't clumsy or awkward, they were masters of flight. In their world, the air was alive with the movement, flocks of them rising with the dawn, hunting over seas filled with plesiosaurs and mosasaurs. But when the asteroid struck 66 million years ago, the skies went silent. They vanished with the dinosaurs, leaving only birds to carry on the dream of flight. Every time you watch a seagull glide effortlessly through the air, you're seeing a shadow of what once was, a reminder that before feathers, wings belonged to the giants. Fact 11. Tyrannosaurus rex. The undisputed king of the land. There's something about Tyrannosaurus rex that instantly grabs the imagination. Even if you've never been into dinosaurs, you know the name. It's the superstar of prehistory, the heavyweight champion of the Cretaceous world. But what made T-Rex so special? It wasn't just size or teeth. It was power, precision, and attitude. Picture this. Over 40 feet long, weighing about 9 tons and armed with a bite strong enough to crush bone. Its jaws could snap through a car door. Yet despite that terrifying strength, T-Rex wasn't just a mindless predator. Fossils suggest it had incredible eyesight and a sharp sense of smell, a calculated hunter that could track prey from miles away. And then there's the personality we imagine. Every fossilized footprint feels like it tells a story, a creature that dominated its world with confidence. But surprisingly, T-Rex may not have always hunted alone. Some evidence hints that it might have scavenged, or even worked in small groups, although scientists still debate that. When the asteroid hit 66 million years ago, T-Rex's reign ended. But somehow, it never left us. Its skeletons stand in museums, its roar echoes in movies, and its legend keeps growing. T-Rex wasn't just a dinosaur, it became the symbol of raw dominance, the ultimate king of the land, and honestly, it's hard to imagine any other animal wearing that crown. Fact 12. Triceratops, the three-horned titan of defense. If Tyrannosaurus rex was the king, Triceratops was the tank that stood its ground. Just picture it. 3 sharp horns, a massive bony frill, and the calm confidence of a creature built to take on anything. It wasn't a predator, but that didn't make it any less formidable. Triceratops lived near the very end of the dinosaur era, often sharing the same plains as T-Rex. In fact, scientists believe they may have faced each other in some of the most dramatic predator-prey battles ever imagined. You can almost see it, the T-Rex charging in, jaws wide, while the Triceratops lowers its head and braces for impact. One wrong move, and either one could end up dead. But Triceratops wasn't just muscle. Its frill and horns weren't only for defense, they were for display. Like peacocks or deer today, those features probably helped attract mates or assert dominance. Each individual might have had slightly different horn shapes, like nature's own signature. It was a plant eater, but a serious one, tearing through prehistoric ferns and cycads, with a beak strong enough to crush branches. When the asteroid came, it vanished with the rest. But not before leaving behind fossils so well preserved they still show the scars of battle. Triceratops may have been peaceful most of the time, but when it was challenged, it was unstoppable. Fact 13. Stegosaurus, the armoured herbivore with a mysterious brain. If dinosaurs had beauty contests, Stegosaurus would win most iconic. Those tall, diamond-shaped plates along its back make it instantly recognisable, but also endlessly mysterious. Scientists have been trying to figure out what those plates were for since the day this dinosaur was discovered. Stegosaurus looked like nature's own fortress. It had a small head, a bulky body, and a tail tipped with 4 deadly spikes, called a thagomizer, a word coined as a joke that scientists actually adopted. When threatened, that tail could swing like a mace, capable of piercing the hide of even large predators. But here's the weird part. For an animal that could grow up to 30 feet long, its brain was about the size of a walnut. For years that made people think it was, well, not very bright. Some even believed it had a second brain near its tail to help control movement, though now we know that's just a myth. Still, intelligence aside, Stegosaurus was a survivor. It lived in the late Jurassic, in landscapes full of giants like Allosaurus. Its back plates may have helped regulate body heat, or maybe they were just for show, bright, colourful and intimidating. Either way, they made it unforgettable. When you see a Stegosaurus fossil, you can't help but smile. It looks like a creature designed by imagination itself. Proof that evolution doesn't always care about practicality, just possibility. Fact 14. Velociraptor, smarter and smaller than movies. Claim. Let's clear this up right away. Velociraptors weren't the 6-foot-tall movie monsters you remember. In real life, they were about the size of a turkey. But don't laugh, they were still one of the most intelligent, dangerous predators of their time. Velociraptors lived in what's now Mongolia, darting across sandy deserts in search of prey. They had sharp claws on each foot curved like sickles, perfect for slashing or gripping. Fossils even show one locked in battle with a protoceratops, frozen in time, mid-fight. It's one of the most dramatic fossils ever found. But what made velociraptors fascinating wasn't brute strength, it was brains. They hunted in packs, communicated and used strategy. Their skulls show large areas for vision and coordination, suggesting quick thinking and fast reactions. And yes, they were covered in feathers, real ones, not movie props. They looked more like deadly birds than scaly reptiles. When the asteroid came, their reign ended. But some scientists believe their descendants survived, evolving into modern birds. So next time you see a hawk or an eagle, remember, that's the spirit of the velociraptor still flying high millions of years later. They weren't the biggest predators, just some of the smartest. And that's what made them unforgettable. Fact 15. Spinosaurus. The fish-eating dinosaur with sail-like spines. If dinosaurs had superweapons, Spinosaurus would be one of them. With its enormous sail-shaped back, long crocodile-like jaws and sharp conical teeth, it looked like something out of another world. For years, scientists thought it was just another land predator. But then came a shocking discovery. Spinosaurus lived mostly in water, its body was built for swimming. The long snout helped it catch fish, the dense bones added stability in water, and the tail acted like a paddle. Fossils from North Africa show evidence of rivers and lagoons where it hunted massive fish, its own private kingdom away from land-based rivals like T-Rex. Spinosaurus could reach lengths of over 50 feet, making it possibly the largest carnivorous dinosaur ever. But its life wasn't easy. Floods, shifting environments, and fierce competition may have pushed it toward extinction even before the asteroid struck. And that sail, the tall spines on its back, still sparks debate. Maybe it was for display, maybe for regulating body heat, or maybe to intimidate rivals. Whatever the reason, it made Spinosaurus unforgettable. A reminder that even among dinosaurs, nature loved to experiment. It wasn't the king of the land or the sky. It was the ruler of the rivers, a predator unlike anything before or since. Fact 16. Argentinosaurus. Possibly the largest land animal ever imagined standing next to a creature so massive that your entire body wouldn't even reach its knee. That's Argentinosaurus, a true titan of the earth. This wasn't just another dinosaur, this was possibly the largest land animal to ever exist. Stretching over 100 feet long and weighing as much as 10 elephants combined, Argentinosaurus was less a dinosaur and more a moving mountain. When it walked, the ground must have trembled like distant thunder. But what's fascinating is how such a giant survived in a world that wasn't built for giants. Its heart had to be a powerhouse, pumping blood through a neck longer than a school bus. Scientists believe it ate non-stop, entire forests of ferns and conifers, just to keep its colossal body running. Its size wasn't just for show though, it was protection. Few predators, even mighty ones like Giganotosaurus, would dare attack something that big unless desperate. Yet for all its grandeur, Argentinosaurus reminds us how fragile even the greatest can be. It lived around 90 million years ago in what's now Argentina, but like all giants, its time eventually ended. Fossils tell us more than just its measurements. They whisper about a world where size meant survival, but not forever. Fact 17. Ankylosaurus. The tank of the dinosaur world. If nature ever built a tank, it was the Ankylosaurus. Covered in armor plates from head to tail, this dinosaur looked ready for battle 24/7. And its tail wasn't just for balance, it was a wrecking ball. A single swing from that club could shatter bones. Ankylosaurus wasn't fast, but it didn't have to be. It was basically a walking fortress, around 20 feet long and covered in bony scales or osteoderms. Even its eyelids had armor. When predators like T-Rex came around, Ankylosaurus would lower itself, swing that tail, and wait for the foolish to come too close. But it wasn't a monster, it was an herbivore. Peaceful, slow, and built for defense, it wandered the lush late Cretaceous plains, feeding on low plants. Its design was pure evolution's genius, protection without aggression. In a world of teeth and claws, it survived through patience and armor, a quiet strength that worked until the end. Fact 18. Parasaurolophus. The dinosaur that made music with its head. Parasaurolophus wasn't the biggest, fastest, or fiercest dinosaur, but it was one of the most unique. Its long, curved crest wasn't just for looks. Scientists believe it worked like a built-in musical instrument. Air flowing through that hollow tube could produce deep, resonant sounds, maybe calls to mates, warnings, or even low-frequency songs that carried across miles. Imagine standing in a prehistoric valley and hearing that eerie, trumpet-like sound echoing through the mist. It's like the world itself was alive and communicating. Parasaurolophus lived in herds, feeding on plants and probably relying on those sounds to stay connected. Its design is elegant, part science, part art. Every detail suggests intelligence and social behavior. Some researchers even compare it to how whales or elephants use sound today. The crest, once thought to be just decoration, turned out to be a symbol of prehistoric communication, proof that even dinosaurs had ways of talking to each other long before words existed. Fact 19. Brachiosaurus. The gentle giant that shaped forests. Brachiosaurus was the skyscraper of its time, towering over the Jurassic landscape with its long neck stretched toward the treetops. While most dinosaurs fed close to the ground, Brachiosaurus ate from the sky. Its nostrils sat high on its head, and its front legs were longer than its back legs, giving it that unmistakable giraffe-like stance. It didn't fight, didn't hunt, didn't rush. It simply existed on a grand scale. A single Brachiosaurus could clear entire groves in a day, shaping ecosystems by the way it ate. The forests it lived in evolved around its appetite. Despite its enormous size, up to 80 feet long and weighing around 60 tons, it's often imagined as calm, even gentle. When we think of dinosaurs, we picture teeth and terror, but Brachiosaurus reminds us that not every giant was a killer. Some ruled with quiet grace, reshaping the Earth one bite at a time. Fact 20. The Chicxulub impact, the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. 66 million years ago, Earth had a normal day until the sky caught fire. A massive asteroid 6 miles wide slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. The impact was so powerful it released more energy than 1 billion nuclear bombs. Within seconds, forests ignited. Within hours, tsunamis taller than skyscrapers swept across oceans. Within days, the sky went dark. Ash and debris blocked sunlight, halting photosynthesis and freezing the planet. For dinosaurs, it was the beginning of the end. What's haunting is that this wasn't just destruction, it was transformation. The Chicxulub impact ended the reign of the dinosaurs but paved the way for mammals, and eventually us to rise. Life didn't die, it changed. That crater, still visible beneath layers of rock, is a scar from one of Earth's darkest days, and one of its most defining. It reminds us that even the mightiest creatures can vanish overnight, and sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings. Fact 21. Andrewsarchus, the largest land mammal carnivore. Imagine a creature with the skull of a wolf, the size of a rhino, and the appetite of a monster. That was Andrewsarchus, the largest known land-dwelling carnivorous mammal to ever walk the earth. It lived around 45 million years ago, long after the dinosaurs were gone, in a world ruled by mammals struggling to find their place at the top. Its skull alone stretched nearly 3 feet long, filled with crushing teeth built for cracking bone and shell. No one's sure what it truly looked like, only its skull has been found. But most scientists imagine a hulking, long-legged predator somewhere between a pig and a bear, prowling the coasts of ancient Asia. It wasn't sleek like a big cat or fast like a wolf. It was brute strength incarnate, a scavenger and a hunter rolled into one. Andrewsarchus probably fed on anything it could overpower or steal, from small mammals to washed-up marine life. It's easy to imagine it looming over the prehistoric shorelines, snout lifted to the wind, always hungry. And just like that, it disappeared. Climate shifts, new predators, and the rise of better adapted species slowly erased it from the story. Yet its legacy remains. Proof that even after the dinosaurs, nature still had a taste for monsters. Fact 22. Megatherium, the giant ground sloth that stood 20 feet tall. Sloths today move slow and hang from trees, but millions of years ago, their ancestors were giants. Megatherium was one of the largest land mammals ever, up to 20 feet tall when it stood on its hind legs, weighing nearly 4 tons. Picture a sloth the size of an elephant, with claws as long as your forearm. Despite its size, Megatherium was mostly peaceful. It lived in South America, feeding on leaves, branches, and maybe fruits. But it wasn't defenseless. Those claws could tear through bark, or predators if necessary. When it stood upright, it could reach high branches, pulling down trees with sheer strength. What's even more fascinating is that early humans likely saw it. Fossils show possible signs of hunting, meaning people once walked alongside these gentle giants. Imagine that. A prehistoric human gazing up at a creature towering over them, hairy and calm yet powerful enough to change the landscape. Then, around 10,000 years ago, it vanished. Whether due to human hunting or climate change, no one knows for sure. But Megatherium reminds us that even the slowest creatures can leave the biggest mark. Fact 23. Woolly mammoth, the Ice Age icon that humans once hunted. The woolly mammoth feels almost familiar, like a story passed down through time. Covered in shaggy fur with curved tusks up to 15 feet long, it roamed the frozen plains during the Ice Age. These creatures were tough, built for cold, wind, and endless snow. Mammoths travelled in herds, just like modern elephants, forming tight family bonds. They used their tusks to dig through ice and snow to reach buried grass. But their world wasn't easy. As the climate warmed and humans expanded, their territory shrank. Cave paintings show humans hunting them, using every part, meat, hide, bone, for survival. Some populations survived longer than others. A few even lived on Wrangel Island until around 4,000 years ago, while the pyramids were already standing in Egypt. Imagine that. Mammoths still walking the earth as human civilization began. They're gone now, but frozen remains found in Siberia keep them almost alive. Hair, skin, and DNA preserved in ice. And with modern science, talk of bringing them back is no longer just fiction. The mammoth may have died, but its story refuses to end. Fact 24. Saber-toothed tiger, Smilodon, built for power, not speed. Few extinct animals are as iconic as the saber-toothed tiger, or more accurately, Smilodon. Those massive fangs, up to 7 inches long, made it look like a nightmare come alive. But despite its fearsome grin, it wasn't built for chasing prey. It was built for ambush. Smilodon had a muscular body, thick neck, and powerful limbs. Instead of running after prey, it waited, then pounced. Its bite wasn't strong, but its jaws opened wide enough to drive those sabers deep into the throat or belly of its victim. Once it struck, the fight was over fast. It hunted large mammals, bison, camels, even young mammoths, during the Ice Age. Living in packs, it likely used teamwork much like modern lions. But when the big prey disappeared, so did Smilodon. Without food, the fanged cat couldn't survive. Still, its bones found in places like the La Brea tar pits tell us it was more than a predator. It was part of an ecosystem that thrived, struggled, and fell together. Those teeth may be long gone, but the legend of the saber-toothed tiger still bites hard. Fact 25. Woolly rhinoceros, the shaggy tank of the tundra. The woolly rhinoceros was built for the Ice Age, massive, muscular, and wrapped in thick fur. Picture a rhino with a sweeping horn and a coat like a yak trudging across frozen grasslands while snow whipped through the air. It lived alongside mammoths and saber-toothed cats, feeding on tough grasses beneath the snow. Its horn, sometimes over 3 feet long, was its pride and weapon, used to clear snow, fight rivals, or defend against predators. Cave paintings from prehistoric humans even depict it, proving that people once saw these majestic beasts face to face. The woolly rhino wasn't just strong, it was adapted. Its body stored fat, its ears were small to hold in warmth, and its thick coat came in layers like a natural parka. But as the Ice Age ended and temperatures rose, its cold world began to vanish. Human hunters and a changing climate likely sealed its fate around 10,000 years ago. Still, like the mammoth, frozen remains keep its story alive, horns, fur, and even skin preserved in ice. The woolly rhinoceros may be gone, but it remains a symbol of strength against impossible odds, a survivor until the very end. Fact 26. Short-faced bear. The massive bear that could outrun humans. Imagine a bear taller than a man even when on all fours, and fast enough to chase you down. That was the short-faced bear, one of the most terrifying predators of the Ice Age. Standing up, it could reach over 10 feet tall, with long legs built for running, not lumbering. This wasn't your typical slow, heavy bear. This was a sprinting powerhouse. It lived across North America, stalking open plains where it could use its speed to chase prey. Some scientists believe it was more of a scavenger than a hunter, using its size to bully smaller predators away from their kills. But make no mistake, if it wanted to hunt, almost nothing could escape it. When humans arrived, they would have faced this giant face-to-face. It could weigh up to a ton, with claws like knives and a bite strong enough to crush bone, and yet, despite its power, it couldn't adapt to the changing world. As the Ice Age ended and large prey disappeared, so did the short-faced bear. It's a reminder that even the fiercest creatures can be defeated, not by claws or teeth, but by time and change. Fact 27. Mastodon. The cousin of mammoths with straighter tusks. At first glance, mastodons look a lot like mammoths, shaggy, tusked giants from the Ice Age, but they were actually distant cousins, built lower, stockier, and with straighter tusks. Their teeth were different too, made for chewing leaves and twigs instead of grass. Mastodons lived in North America's forests, feeding on trees and shrubs. They were gentle giants, usually avoiding conflict unless threatened. Early humans encountered them and left behind evidence of hunts, spears, carvings, and bones split open for marrow. Unlike mammoths, mastodons preferred wooded areas over icy plains. That difference in habitat helped them survive longer in some regions, until around 11,000 years ago, when humans and a warming climate finally caught up. Today, their remains are found frozen or fossilized, often beautifully preserved. Some still have hair, skin, or tusks intact. They may not be as famous as mammoths, but mastodons tell a quieter story, of strength without savagery, and of a world that humans were just beginning to shape. Fact 28. Diprotodon, the giant wombat from Ice Age Australia. Now picture a wombat the size of a car. That's Diprotodon, the largest marsupial that ever lived. It looked like a giant teddy bear crossed with a rhino, weighing over 6,000 pounds and stretching more than 13 feet long. It roamed Ice Age Australia, munching on leaves, bark, and grasses. Like modern wombats, it was likely slow and peaceful, but its size alone kept predators away. Imagine walking across an ancient Australian plain and seeing these gentle giants grazing in herds under a red sunset. Early Aboriginal rock art may even depict them, meaning humans saw Diprotodon before it vanished around 45,000 years ago, likely due to overhunting and changing climate. Its extinction marked more than the loss of a species. It was the end of Australia's megafauna age, a time when kangaroos, wombats, and koalas had giants among them. Diprotodon is proof that even the most peaceful giants can disappear quietly, leaving behind only bones and stories. Fact 29. Gigantopithecus, the real-life King Kong of Asia. Gigantopithecus sounds like a myth, but it was real. The largest ape to ever exist. Standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing close to 1,000 pounds, it roamed the forests of ancient China and Southeast Asia. Imagine a creature that looked like an enormous orangutan, towering among the trees. It wasn't a monster, though. Gigantopithecus ate mostly fruit and bamboo, using its size to reach what others couldn't. For over 1 million years, it lived peacefully, until its food sources dwindled and the forest began to vanish. Humans may have encountered it. Some legends of Yeti or Bigfoot could have roots in ancient memories of these giant apes. But science paints a sadder ending. They likely went extinct around 300,000 years ago, victims of climate change and starvation. Gigantopithecus reminds us that even intelligence and strength aren't enough when the environment changes. A real-life King Kong, yes, but one that fell quietly into myth. Fact 30. Glyptodon. The armadillo the size of a car meet Glyptodon, the prehistoric armadillo that could have doubled as a tank. About the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, it was covered in a dome of solid bone. Even its tail was a weapon, a heavy club it could swing to shatter predators' bones. It lived in South America during the Ice Age, grazing peacefully on plants near rivers and grasslands. Despite its armour, Glyptodon wasn't aggressive, it just didn't need to be. Few predators could bite through its shell. Early humans, however, found a use for it. Fossil evidence suggests people may have used Glyptodon shells as shelters or shields. Imagine living under the dome of a creature that once roamed the same land. Around 10,000 years ago, like many Ice Age giants, it vanished, likely hunted or caught in the wave of warming that reshaped the planet. But its legacy is unforgettable. Nature once built a car-sized armadillo, rolled it across the earth, and then, as always, moved on. Fact 31. Terror birds. Flightless predators that replaced raptors. After the dinosaurs vanished, you might think the age of terrifying land predators ended too, but it didn't. It just changed shape. Enter the terror birds. These flightless killers ruled South America for nearly 60 million years, long before humans arrived. Standing up to 10 feet tall, they had long, powerful legs, razor-sharp beaks, and the attitude of a raptor that refused to go quietly into extinction. They couldn't fly, but they didn't need to. Terror birds were built for speed. Some could sprint at over 30 miles per hour, chasing down prey like small mammals and reptiles. With one swift strike of their hooked beak, they could crush skulls or tear flesh with surgical precision. They were the top predators of their time, the heirs to the dinosaurs' throne. When the continents shifted and new predators arrived, like saber-toothed cats, the terror birds slowly lost their dominance. Still, the idea of a bird taller than a man, running like a cheetah and killing with a single blow, is a chilling reminder. Nature doesn't need wings to rule the skies. Sometimes it just needs legs strong enough to shake the ground. Fact 32. Haast's eagle. The giant bird that hunted humans in New Zealand. Imagine walking through the forests of ancient New Zealand and feeling a shadow sweep over you. You look up and see a pair of wings stretching nearly 10 feet across. That's not a myth. That was Haast's eagle, the largest eagle to ever live. It preyed on the giant, flightless moa, birds that could weigh over 500 pounds. But when humans arrived around 700 years ago and hunted the moa to extinction, Haast's eagle turned its attention to the next biggest thing moving on two legs: us. Old Maori legends tell of a giant bird called the puakai, powerful enough to lift people into the air, and science suggests those stories may have been true. With talons the size of tiger claws and a body built for ambush, Haast's eagle could strike from above and kill within seconds. But without its main food source, it too disappeared. In the end, both predator and prey vanished together, a haunting example of how human arrival can rewrite nature's script in just a few generations. Fact 33. Great auk, the penguin-like bird hunted to extinction. The great auk was once a familiar sight across the cold Atlantic, a sleek, flightless seabird that looked like a penguin but lived in the northern hemisphere. It stood about 3 feet tall, with glossy black feathers, a white belly and a beak perfect for catching fish. But the great auk's real story is one of tragedy. Because it couldn't fly and nested in large colonies, it became an easy target. Sailors and hunters killed them for meat, feathers, and oil. By the 1800s, their numbers had plummeted. The last known pair was killed in 1844 on an island off Iceland, crushed and skinned for a collector. It's heartbreaking, really. These birds survived ice ages and predators, but they couldn't survive us. The great auk's extinction became one of the first wake-up calls about human impact on wildlife. Today, preserved specimens sit in museums, silent, stiff reminders of a species that trusted the wrong creature. The great auk never knew fear until it was too late. Fact 34. Dodo, the symbol of human-caused extinction. The dodo wasn't dumb, just unlucky. This flightless bird from the island of Mauritius lived in peace for thousands of years, with no natural predators. Then humans arrived in the 1600s, bringing rats, pigs, and dogs. Within less than a century, the dodo was gone. It stood about 3 feet tall, round-bodied and oddly charming, a bird that had evolved in paradise. But paradise ended quickly. Sailors hunted them for food even though the meat was said to taste terrible. Introduced animals ate their eggs. The dodo, unafraid and unprepared, never stood a chance. And yet the dodo's extinction changed history. It became the first widely recognized case of human-driven extinction, a symbol of how easily we destroy what we don't understand. Today, the dodo lives on in art, stories and cautionary tales. It reminds us that survival isn't always about intelligence or strength. Sometimes it's just about being left alone long enough to adapt. Fact 35. Moa, the enormous flightless bird of New Zealand. Before humans ever set foot in New Zealand, the moa ruled the land. There were several species, some small, some towering over 12 feet tall. They were herbivores, feeding on leaves and twigs, their massive bodies supported by thick legs and feathered hides. Without mammals on the islands, the moa had no predators, except for the mighty Haast's eagle. For centuries that balance worked perfectly. But when the Merry people arrived about 700 years ago, everything changed. The moa were easy to hunt, and their meat fed entire villages. Within a few hundred years they were gone, every last one, and with them, Haast's eagle soon followed. Their extinction wasn't just the loss of a species, it was the collapse of an entire ecosystem. The forests grew differently without them. The land changed. Today, only their bones remain. Massive, hollow relics of a world where birds, not beasts, ruled the earth. The moa's story is a quiet reminder. Sometimes, even giants disappear without a sound. Fact 36. Hesperornis, the toothed diving bird of the Cretaceous. Long before penguins ever appeared, Hesperornis was diving through the seas of the late Cretaceous, roughly 85 million years ago. This ancient bird stood nearly 6 feet long and looked more like a reptilian penguin than any bird alive today. Unlike modern seabirds, Hesperornis couldn't fly. Its wings were tiny and nearly useless. But what it lacked in flight, it made up for in swimming power. Its strong legs were set far back on its body, perfect for underwater propulsion, allowing it to chase fish with incredible agility. What truly set Hesperornis apart were its teeth. Modern birds don't have any, but this creature's long, narrow jaws were lined with sharp teeth that locked prey in place, a reminder of its dinosaur ancestry. Those jaws helped it grip slippery fish, which made up most of its diet. Fossils show that its bones were dense, helping it stay submerged while hunting, much like today's penguins and loons. Hesperornis lived in the warm, shallow seas that once covered much of North America. Its fossils were first discovered by paleontologist Othniel Charles Marsh in the 1870s during the famous Bone Wars. This discovery helped scientists connect birds to dinosaurs, an idea that was revolutionary at the time. It revealed that birds didn't simply appear out of nowhere. They evolved step by step from their reptilian ancestors. When the mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs, Hesperornis disappeared too. It was a specialist, adapted to a very specific lifestyle in the Cretaceous seas, and when those ecosystems collapsed, it couldn't survive. Yet its legacy lives on in modern birds, reminding us that even flightless species played a major role in the story of avian evolution. Hesperornis stands as a fascinating glimpse into evolution in motion, a creature halfway between the dinosaur world and the bird world, showing how nature experiments with form and function before settling on what survives. Fact 37. Archaeopteryx, the missing link between dinosaurs and birds. Few fossils have ever been as important as Archaeopteryx. Discovered in the 1860s in the limestone quarries of Solnhofen, Germany, it became a turning point in our understanding of evolution. This small creature, about the size of a crow, lived around 150 million years ago during the late Jurassic period. It had wings and feathers like a modern bird, yet also teeth, claws on its wings and a long bony tail, just like a dinosaur. When Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species, critics asked for missing links between major animal groups. Then, almost perfectly on cue, Archaeopteryx was found. It proved that the boundary between dinosaurs and birds wasn't a sudden leap but a gradual transition. Its feathers were perfectly developed for flight or gliding, showing that flight had begun to evolve far earlier than scientists once thought. However, Archaeopteryx wasn't quite like today's birds. It couldn't take off from the ground easily. Its breastbone wasn't strong enough to anchor powerful flight muscles. It probably climbed into trees or ran down slopes before launching into the air. Once airborne, it could glide or flap short distances, a behaviour similar to some modern birds that live in dense forests. Its claws and teeth suggest it was a carnivore, feeding on insects and small reptiles. Scientists have even found impressions of its feathers preserved in exquisite detail, confirming that feathers didn't just evolve for flight. They likely began as insulation or display features in dinosaurs. Over the years, more fossils have blurred the line between bird and dinosaur, but Archaeopteryx remains the most famous. It's not the first bird by modern standards, but it's one of the most iconic evolutionary bridges ever discovered. Proof that every major change in nature happens one step at a time. Fact 38. Ichthyornis. The first true bird with teeth. Long after Archaeopteryx, another strange bird took to the skies. Ichthyornis. Living about 90 million years ago during the late Cretaceous, it was about the size of a pigeon and capable of powered flight. But what made it remarkable was its mouth, filled with sharp, snapping teeth. Ichthyornis looked almost like a modern seabird, with long wings and a strong beak-like snout. It spent much of its life over the Cretaceous seas, diving to catch fish and squid. Its skeleton shows that it had a keeled breastbone and strong flight muscles, features identical to those of modern birds. That means by this time, birds were already expert flyers. The teeth of Ichthyornis weren't just for show. They lined the edges of its jaw like saw blades, helping it grasp slippery prey. Yet it also had a true beak at the tip of its jaw, an evolutionary blend of old and new traits. Over time, descendants of birds like Ichthyornis would lose their teeth entirely, evolving the fully beaked mouths we see in birds today. Charles Darwin himself was fascinated by Ichthyornis. When its fossils were described in the late 1800s, they provided direct evidence of evolution, showing that birds didn't suddenly replace reptiles, but gradually transformed from them. The fossil combined modern flight anatomy with primitive dinosaur-like jaws, beautifully illustrating the slow process of adaptation. Ichthyornis lived alongside marine reptiles like mosasaurs and flying pterosaurs, sharing the skies and seas in a competitive world. But when the asteroid struck at the end of the Cretaceous, both Ichthyornis and its contemporaries vanished. Still, its story endures, a snapshot of evolution caught in motion, revealing how birds became the sky's ultimate survivors. Fact 39. Basilosaurus, the prehistoric whale that hunted other whales. At first glance, Basilosaurus sounds like a dinosaur, but it was actually an ancient whale, and a terrifying one. Living around 40 million years ago during the Eocene epoch, it could reach over 60 feet in length, longer than most modern whales. Unlike today's gentle giants, Basilosaurus was a predator, long, serpent-like, and equipped with teeth designed to tear flesh. When fossils were first found in the 1830s, scientists thought it was a giant marine reptile, hence the name Basilosaurus, meaning king lizard. Only later did researchers realize it was a mammal, a direct ancestor of modern whales. Its long, narrow body and small flippers made it a powerful swimmer, though probably not a deep diver. What's most fascinating is that Basilosaurus still had tiny, useless hind legs, remnants of the time when its ancestors walked on land. These limbs are among the best examples of vestigial structures in evolution, physical proof of how whales transitioned from land-dwelling mammals to oceanic hunters. Fossil evidence shows that Basilosaurus fed on large fish, and even other whales, including smaller relatives like Dorudon. It used its sharp front teeth to grab prey and its molars to slice through flesh. Unlike modern whales, it didn't use echolocation or baleen. It relied purely on speed and strength. Its reign ended as the oceans changed and new whale species evolved. Later whales developed better swimming styles and more efficient hunting or filter feeding methods. But Basilosaurus remains one of evolution's most dramatic creatures, a snapshot of a predator caught between two worlds. Not quite a land mammal anymore, but not yet the gentle whale we know today. Fact 40. Megalodon, the 60-foot shark that ruled the oceans. No list of extinct animals is complete without the legendary Megalodon. This colossal shark, which lived between 23 and 3.6 million years ago, was the largest predatory fish to ever exist. Estimates suggest it reached lengths of up to 60 feet, 3 times longer than a great white shark. Its teeth were over 7 inches long, shaped like massive triangles, perfect for slicing through flesh and bone. A single bite from Megalodon could crush a whale's skull. It hunted large marine mammals such as seals, dolphins, and early whales, ruling the oceans for millions of years. Megalodon wasn't just big. It was built for power. Its jaws could open nearly 6 feet wide, and its bite force has been estimated at over 40,000 pounds per square inch, the most powerful of any animal ever known. It swam through warm coastal seas across the globe, leaving behind teeth that have been found on every continent except Antarctica. So why did such a dominant predator vanish? Scientists believe climate change played a key role. As the planet cooled, ocean temperatures dropped, and many of Megalodon's prey species went extinct. Competition from smaller, faster sharks, including ancestors of the great white, may have finished the job. Though it disappeared around 3.6 million years ago, Megalodon remains one of the most iconic creatures in prehistory. Its fossils continue to inspire awe, reminding us that even the most powerful species are never safe from nature's changes. Megalodon wasn't a monster from legend. It was a masterpiece of evolution, proof that nature once forged predators beyond anything our oceans have seen since. Fact 41. Irish elk, the deer with 12-foot wide antlers. The Irish elk, or Megalochus giganteus, was one of the most spectacular animals of the Ice Age, a giant deer whose antlers stretched up to 12 feet across from tip to tip. Despite its name, it wasn't exclusive to Ireland or closely related to modern elk. It roamed across Europe, northern Asia, and parts of Africa, thriving during the last Ice Age around 400,000 to 8,000 years ago. Fossils found in Irish peat bogs gave it its name, where the perfectly preserved antlers astonished early scientists. The Irish elk stood about 7 feet tall at the shoulders and could weigh over 1,500 pounds, roughly the size of a modern moose. But its enormous antlers were its defining feature. Each antler could weigh more than 80 pounds, making them one of the most extravagant displays in nature's history. These weren't just for show, they played a critical role in mating rituals. Males likely used them to battle rivals and impress females, similar to how deer behave today. However, such massive antlers came at a cost. They required tremendous amounts of energy and nutrients to grow, especially calcium and phosphorus. During harsh Ice Age winters, when food was scarce, this could be fatal. Some scientists believe that environmental changes and shrinking habitats made it harder for these giants to sustain such energy demands. The Irish elk eventually went extinct around 8,000 years ago, likely due to a combination of climate change and human hunting. As forests replaced open grasslands after the Ice Age, their large antlers became a disadvantage in dense vegetation. Humans also hunted them for meat and antlers, which were prized materials. Even in extinction, the Irish elk remains a symbol of nature's grandeur, a creature that pushed evolution's limits for beauty and strength. Its story is a reminder that sometimes magnificence itself can become a burden when the world around it changes. Fact 42. Steller's sea cow, the gentle giant hunted to death in 30 years. Discovered in 1741 by naturalist Georg Wilhelm Steller, the Steller's sea cow was one of the most tragic cases of rapid extinction caused by humans. These massive, gentle creatures lived in the cold waters around the Commander Islands near Russia. Growing up to 30 feet long and weighing over 10 tons, they were relatives of modern manatees and dugongs, but much larger. Unlike their tropical cousins, Steller's sea cows lived in frigid northern seas and fed mainly on kelp. They were slow-moving, peaceful herbivores that spent their days grazing near the surface, using their flippers to hold seaweed and pull it into their mouths. Their thick, bark-like skin and enormous size protected them from natural predators, but not from humans. When Steller and his crew shipwrecked on Bering Island, they relied on these sea cows for food. Steller described them as intelligent, social animals that formed close family groups and even seemed to mourn their dead. Sadly, his discovery sealed their fate. Within 3 decades of their discovery, they were hunted to extinction by fur traders and sailors for their meat, fat, and hides. The oil-rich blubber was used for lamps, and the hides were tough enough to make boat coverings. By 1768, less than 30 years after humans first documented them, the last Steller's sea cow was gone. They had survived thousands of years of natural challenges, only to vanish almost instantly once humans entered their isolated world. Their extinction is often cited as one of the earliest documented examples of how quickly human activity can wipe out a species. Today, the Steller's sea cow serves as a haunting warning that even the most peaceful giants can disappear in a blink when curiosity turns into exploitation. Fact 43. Thylacine, Tasmanian tiger, the striped predator wiped out by settlers. The thylacine, often called the Tasmanian tiger because of its striped back, was a unique predator that once roamed Australia, Tasmania and New Guinea. Despite its dog-like appearance, it wasn't a canine at all. It was a marsupial, more closely related to kangaroos and koalas. Adult thylacines were about the size of a medium dog, with a long stiff tail and powerful jaws that could open almost 90 degrees. They were nocturnal hunters, feeding on wallabies, birds, and small mammals. Like other marsupials, females carried their young in pouches. Even the males had a partial pouch to protect their organs while running through dense bush. Before humans arrived, thylacines were widespread across mainland Australia, but competition from the dingo, habitat loss, and human hunting drove them to extinction there around 2,000 years ago. In Tasmania, where dingoes never reached, the species survived until European settlers arrived in the 1800s. Farmers blamed thylacines for killing livestock, especially sheep, and the government offered bounties for their capture or death. Between 1888 and 1909, thousands were killed. Habitat destruction and disease added to their decline, and by the early 1900s only a few remained. The last known thylacine, nicknamed Benjamin, died alone in a Hobart Zoo on September 7, 1936, the same year the species was officially granted protection. Ironically, that protection came too late. Since then, there have been countless alleged sightings and expeditions to find the thylacine in Tasmania's wilderness, but no proof has ever surfaced. Its extinction remains one of Australia's deepest ecological losses, a reminder of how fear and misunderstanding can destroy what we don't take time to understand. Fact 44. Quagga, the half-striped zebra of South Africa. The quagga was a striking and mysterious animal, a subspecies of the plain zebra that lived in South Africa. What made it unique was its appearance. Its front half was boldly striped like a zebra, while the stripes faded toward its brown, horse-like rear. This gave the quagga a half-finished look that fascinated early naturalists. Quaggas once roamed the grassy plains of the Karoo region in huge herds, grazing alongside antelope and ostriches. They were social, noisy, and highly adapted to their dry environment. But when Dutch settlers and later European colonists arrived, they began to view quaggas as competition for grazing livestock. In the 1800s, settlers hunted them relentlessly for their meat, hides, and to protect farmland. By the 1870s, wild quaggas had vanished, and the last captive one died in Amsterdam Zoo in 1883, marking the species' extinction. For decades, scientists thought the quagga was a completely separate species, but modern DNA studies revealed it was actually a distinct population of the plain zebra, Equus quagga quagga. This discovery inspired the Quagga Project, an ongoing effort to selectively breed zebras that closely resemble quaggas by emphasizing genes for reduced striping. Although these new zebras aren't true quaggas, they bring back the animal's appearance and remind us of its place in Africa's natural heritage. The quagga's story is a quiet tragedy, an animal that vanished simply because it stood in the way of human expansion, gone before anyone truly understood what it was. Fact 45. Passenger pigeon, once billions strong, gone in a century. At one time, the passenger pigeon was the most abundant bird on Earth. Flocks were so vast they could darken the sky for hours, even days, as they migrated across North America. In the early 1800s, their population was estimated at 3 to 5 billion birds, yet by 1914, not one remained alive. Passenger pigeons lived in massive colonies, nesting in trees that stretched for miles. They fed on acorns, seeds, and nuts, playing a vital role in forest ecosystems. Their strength came from their numbers. Flying in such dense flocks protected them from predators. But that same trait became their downfall once humans began hunting them on an industrial scale. As railroads and telegraphs expanded across the US, hunters coordinated mass slaughters, killing thousands of birds a day. Their meat was sold cheaply as food for slaves and the poor, and their feathers were used for bedding. Entire nesting colonies were wiped out in days. Deforestation destroyed their breeding grounds, and without large flocks the species couldn't reproduce successfully. The population collapsed faster than anyone thought possible. The last known passenger pigeon, a female named Martha, died in the Cincinnati Zoo on September 1st, 1914, marking the end of a species that once dominated the skies. The passenger pigeon's extinction shocked the world and sparked the first major conservation movements in the United States. It taught scientists and the public that even the most abundant species can vanish when human greed outweighs respect for nature. Today, Martha is preserved in the Smithsonian, a silent warning from the past, proof that numbers don't guarantee survival and that once abundance can disappear in the blink of an eye. Fact 46. Great Auk. The Northern Hemisphere's penguin lost to greed. Long before people ever saw a real penguin, the great auk was their northern counterpart, a black and white, flightless bird that waddled across rocky shores and dove gracefully beneath icy Atlantic waters. Standing about 3 feet tall, it lived in colonies from Canada to Iceland, feasting on fish and nesting on remote islands. But the great auk's story is one of heartbreaking greed. Because it couldn't fly and wasn't afraid of humans, it became an easy target for sailors and hunters. For centuries, they killed it for meat, oil, and feathers, even using its down to stuff mattresses. By the 1700s, its colonies were disappearing one by one. Collectors then made things worse. As the bird became rare, museums and private buyers offered huge sums for skins and eggs. Hunters slaughtered the last few survivors to meet the demand. The final confirmed pair was killed in 1844 on LD Island. Iceland, strangled and their single egg crushed beneath a boot. It's a chilling thought. The great auk survived thousands of years of storms, predators, and climate shifts, but it couldn't survive human curiosity and profit. Its extinction helped spark the first conservation laws in some countries, but too late to save the bird itself. Today, stuffed specimens and fossilized eggs rest in museums around the world, mute witnesses to how quickly human greed can erase something beautiful and irreplaceable. Fact 47. Pyrenean ibex. The first extinct animal briefly cloned high in the Pyrenees Mountains between France and Spain once lived the Pyrenean ibex, a wild goat known for its curved horns and sure-footed agility. For centuries it was hunted for meat, hides, and trophies. As human settlement expanded and competition with livestock grew, its numbers fell sharply. By 2000, only one remained, a female named Celia. On January 6, 2000, Celia was found dead beneath a fallen tree, marking the end of her kind. But her story didn't end there. Scientists had preserved some of her cells in liquid nitrogen, and in 2003 they attempted something unprecedented, cloning her using goat eggs and surrogate mothers. Against all odds, one cloned ibex was born. For 7 precious minutes, the Pyrenean ibex returned from extinction, only to die shortly after birth due to lung defects. It became the first species ever de-extincted, even if only briefly. The experiment was both groundbreaking and bittersweet. It proved cloning could revive lost species, but also raised questions. Should we bring back extinct animals? Or focus on protecting those still here? Though the Pyrenean ibex is gone, Celia's cells live on in labs, frozen symbols of humanity's desire to undo what it once destroyed. Fact 48. Carolina parakeet. The only parrot native to the US. It's hard to imagine the skies of the eastern United States once filled with flocks of green and yellow parrots, but they did. The Carolina parakeet was North America's only native parrot, found from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. They were beautiful and social, often gathering in huge, noisy flocks. Their bright colours made them stand out against forests, and tragically, that visibility led to their downfall. Farmers saw them as pests because they raided orchards and grain fields, while their feathers were prized for hats and clothing. By the mid-1800s, hunting and deforestation devastated their numbers. Worse, the birds had a heartbreaking instinct. When one parakeet was shot, others would circle back to help or mourn, making them easy targets for the next shot. The last known wild Carolina parakeet was seen in Florida in the early 1900s. The final captive bird, named Incas, died at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1918 in the same cage where the last passenger pigeon had perished 4 years earlier. Their extinction feels especially tragic because it was entirely preventable. They weren't hunted for survival, but for fashion and convenience. Today, the forests that once echoed with their chatter are silent, and the US has no native parrot left to replace them. Fact 49. Baiji dolphin. The first dolphin species declared extinct by humans in the misty waters of China's Yangtze River. The Baiji dolphin, a creature once celebrated in ancient legends, glided gracefully through muddy currents. It was regarded as a symbol of peace and good fortune. But as China industrialized, the Baiji's world collapsed. By the late 20th century, pollution, boat traffic and overfishing had turned its river home into a deadly trap. Dolphins were struck by propellers, tangled in fishing nets, and deafened by underwater engines. Conservation efforts came too late. By the 1990s, fewer than 100 remained. In 2006, scientists conducted an extensive search along the entire Yangtze. Not a single Baiji was found. The species was declared functionally extinct, meaning even if a few survived, there weren't enough to recover. It became the first dolphin species ever driven to extinction by humans. The Baiji's loss wasn't just ecological, it was cultural. For centuries it was part of Chinese folklore and art. Its disappearance marked a turning point in awareness about industrial impact on freshwater ecosystems. Today, the Yangtze's waters still run wide and grey, but without the gentle arcs of the Baiji breaking its surface. Its story is a somber reminder that even sacred creatures can vanish when profit outweighs reverence. Fact 50. Atlas bear, North Africa's last native bear. The Atlas bear was once a powerful symbol of North Africa's wilderness. It lived in the Atlas Mountains, stretching across modern-day Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. It was a subspecies of the brown bear, smaller than its European relatives but still formidable, with dark fur and a strong build. Ancient Romans knew the Atlas bear well. They captured thousands for gladiatorial games, forcing them to fight lions, tigers and humans for entertainment. Centuries of hunting, combined with deforestation and human expansion, pushed the species into isolated mountain refuges. By the 1800s, European colonists continued the destruction. Farmers saw them as threats to livestock and crops, and trophy hunters sought their hides and skulls. The last confirmed Atlas bear was killed in the late 1800s in the Tetuan Mountains of Morocco. It was the only native bear species of Africa, and its extinction left the continent without one. Fossils and ancient art show just how long they'd been part of the region's ecosystem, shaping forests and food chains for thousands of years. The Atlas bear's story is often forgotten, overshadowed by more famous extinctions. Yet it stands as a quiet testament to how quickly human ambition can erase entire lineages, leaving behind only bones, stories, and the hollow echo of a once mighty growl across the mountains. Fact 51. Falkland Islands. Wolf. The only native land mammal of the islands. Long before humans reached the remote Falkland Islands, a curious predator roamed the windswept plains, the Falkland Islands wolf, also known as the warrah. It was the only native land mammal there, a fox-like creature with thick fur, a bushy tail, and a gentle, curious nature that would ultimately doom it. When explorers first arrived in the 1600s, they were baffled. The islands were hundreds of miles from South America, yet here was a land predator with no natural way to get there. Modern DNA studies suggest its ancestors crossed over from the mainland thousands of years ago when sea levels were lower, possibly travelling across frozen land bridges or drifting on ice. The warrah wasn't fierce. In fact, it was almost too trusting. Early sailors described it walking straight up to humans without fear, even sniffing at their boots. But that curiosity made it easy prey. Settlers saw it as a threat to sheep and began hunting it relentlessly. By 1876, the last Falkland Islands wolf was gone, making it the first canid species driven to extinction in modern times. Its disappearance was one of the earliest warnings about how fragile isolated ecosystems can be. Today, the Falklands remain wolf-free, haunted by the memory of an animal that trusted us a little too much. Fact 52. Rodriguez solitaire, a flightless cousin of the dodo. On the small island of Rodriguez in the Indian Ocean, there once lived a close cousin of the dodo, the Rodriguez solitaire. Like the dodo, it evolved in isolation, growing large and flightless because it had no natural predators. Males could weigh over 50 pounds and had strong bony knobs on their wings, which they used in fights for territory. Early visitors in the 1600s described the solitaire as solitary and territorial, living up to its name. They nested on the ground, feeding on fruits and seeds, completely unprepared for the world that would soon arrive. When sailors began stopping at Rodriguez, they brought rats, cats and pigs, invaders that feasted on solitaire eggs and chicks. Humans also hunted them for food, though reports say their meat was tough and unappealing. By around 1760, the species was gone. What's remarkable is how much we know about it despite its early extinction. The solitaire was described in detail by a stranded sailor named François Legois, whose notes gave scientists rare insight into its behaviour. Fossils later confirmed his accounts, proving that even one person's careful observation can preserve the story of a vanished species. The Rodriguez solitaire may never have flown, but through Legoit's words it soars across history. Fact 53. Réunion ibis. A vanished island bird known from stories. The Réunion ibis, sometimes called the white dodo of Réunion, is one of the strangest mysteries of extinction. It lived on Réunion Island in the Indian Ocean, not far from Mauritius and Rodriguez, two islands famous for their lost birds. But the ibis left behind almost nothing. No full skeletons, no preserved skins, just stories, sketches and fragments of bone. Early travellers in the 1600s described large, white, flightless birds that lived in the island's forests. They were said to have curved beaks and elegant necks, traits of an ibis, not a dodo. Later, when scientists studied the limited remains, they concluded it was indeed a unique species of flightless ibis, one that had evolved without predators, just like its neighbours. Sadly, its trust in that safety led to its doom. When people settled on Réunion, they cleared forests and brought pigs, cats and rats that devoured the ibis's eggs. By the early 1700s, it was gone, quietly erased before anyone had even given it a proper name. The Réunion ibis is a reminder of how fragile life on islands can be. Entire species can vanish before the world even notices they existed. It's a ghost from an age when the ocean's most beautiful islands became silent one by one. Fact 54. Mauritius giant skink, the mysterious reptile of the Mascarenes. Among the many forgotten creatures of the Mascarenes Islands, few are as mysterious as the Mauritius giant skink. Once found on Mauritius, it was the largest lizard on the island, sleek, shiny, and up to 2 feet long. Unlike the dodo, it didn't make much noise or attract attention. It lived quietly among rocks and coastal shrubs, feeding on fruits and insects, but silence couldn't save it. When humans arrived, they brought rats, cats, and mongooses, all eager predators of eggs and small animals. The skink's slow movements and trusting nature made it an easy target. By the early 1800s, it was gone. The last confirmed specimen was collected in 1820, and soon after, even stories of sightings stopped. No one even thought to study it closely before it disappeared. Today, we know the Mauritius giant skink only through preserved specimens and a few notes from naturalists. Its extinction barely registered at the time, overshadowed by the loss of the dodo, yet it was part of the same chain reaction that wiped out much of the Mascarenes' unique wildlife. Its quiet vanishing reminds us that extinction doesn't always come with noise or drama. Sometimes, it's just the silence left behind when no one is watching. Fact 55. Laysan rail, a tiny flightless bird wiped out by rats, deep in the Pacific, on a small coral island called Laysan. There once lived a little brown bird no bigger than a sparrow, the Laysan rail. It couldn't fly, but it didn't need to. The island had no predators, and food was everywhere. It darted through grass and sand, feeding on insects and tiny crabs, completely at peace in its isolated world. When humans arrived in the late 1800s, everything changed. Guano miners destroyed much of the island's vegetation, and rabbits, introduced by humans, devoured what was left. The rail adapted for a time, surviving on scraps and hiding among what remained of its shrinking home. Then came the final blow. In 1944, World War II brought American forces to nearby Midway Atoll, where a small population of Laysan rails had been relocated for protection. a shipwreck during the war accidentally introduced rats, and within a few years, every last rail was gone. It was extinction in slow motion, not from hunting or greed, but from carelessness. Today, the lace and rail exists only in museum drawers, tiny, fragile, and perfectly preserved, as if frozen mid-step. Its story is one of quiet resilience and an even quieter ending. A creature that survived isolation, storms, and starvation, only to lose everything to the smallest invader of all. Fact 56. St. Helena giant earwig, the world's largest earwig. On the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, there once lived a creature that few would ever see, the St. Helena giant earwig. Growing up to 3 inches long, it was the largest earwig in the world. Despite its intimidating size and fierce-looking pincers, it was harmless, a shy nocturnal insect that spent its days hiding under rocks and in deep soil cracks. For centuries, the earwig lived quietly, untouched by predators. That changed when humans arrived on St. Helena. Settlers brought goats, rats, and centipedes, all of which destroyed its delicate habitat. The island's dry slopes were stripped bare, and the deep, cool soil where the earwig lived was trampled or eroded away. By the 1960s, sightings had become rare. In 1967, scientists collected a few specimens, confirming its existence, and then it vanished. For decades, conservationists searched for survivors, setting traps and turning over every stone in the hopes of finding one. But no trace ever appeared. The St. Helena giant earwig was declared extinct in 2014. It's a sobering reminder that even small, overlooked creatures can tell enormous stories about how fragile island ecosystems truly are. In the end, it wasn't human cruelty that doomed it, just neglect. Fact 57. Ascension Island tortoise. Lost before it could be studied, Ascension Island, a volcanic rock in the middle of the Atlantic, once had a species of tortoise found nowhere else on Earth, the Ascension Island tortoise. Sadly, it was gone before scientists could properly study or even describe it. When sailors reached the island in the 1500s, they found large tortoises wandering the barren lava fields. They were easy to catch and provided fresh meat on long voyages. For centuries, passing ships harvested them without restraint. By the early 1700s, not a single tortoise was left alive. No bones, no shells, no drawings. Almost nothing remains except brief descriptions in sailors' journals. The only evidence of its existence is historical mention, suggesting it may have resembled the giant tortoises of the Seychelles or Galapagos. In a twist of history, the island later gained a new population of tortoises, introduced species from elsewhere that now roam freely. But they're not the same. The true Ascension Island tortoise is gone forever, a victim of discovery before science even had the chance to understand it. Its loss captures the tragedy of many early extinctions, creatures erased before they were even named. Fact 58. Lord Howe Island stick insect. Tree lobster, thought extinct, but rediscovered. The Lord Howe Island stick insect is a story of both loss and hope. Once found only on Lord Howe Island near Australia, this massive insect, nicknamed the tree lobster, was black, glossy, and as long as a human finger. In 1918, a shipwreck brought rats to the island. Within 2 years, the entire population of stick insects was believed to be gone. Scientists declared it extinct, and for decades, it existed only as a preserved curiosity in museum drawers. Then, in 2001, climbers on a nearby sea stack called Ball's Pyramid made an incredible discovery. High on the cliffs, under a single bush, they found living Lord Howe Island stick insects, a tiny hidden colony surviving in one of the world's most unlikely refuges. Since then, captive breeding programs have worked to restore the species, and thousands have hatched in protected facilities. Conservationists hope to one day reintroduce them to Lord Howe Island once the invasive rats are completely removed. The Lord Howe Island stick insect is proof that even when a species seems lost, nature sometimes finds a way to hold on, clinging, literally, to the edge of survival. Fact 59. Guam kingfisher. Now exists only in captivity. The Guam kingfisher, with its bright blue and chestnut feathers, was once a common sight in the forests of Guam. Known locally as the sihek, it perched along riverbanks and hunted small reptiles and insects with lightning-fast dives. Then came the brown tree snake. Accidentally introduced after World War II, the snake had no natural predators and quickly multiplied. It devoured nearly every bird species on the island, including the kingfisher's eggs and chicks. By 1988, only a few dozen Guam kingfishers were left. Conservationists captured the remaining birds and began a breeding program to save the species. It worked, but the bird is now extinct in the wild. Every living Guam kingfisher today exists in captivity, cared for by zoos and wildlife centres that keep its fragile lineage alive. Plans are underway to reintroduce the bird to nearby islands free of snakes, but it's a slow, careful process. The Guam kingfisher stands as both a tragedy and a lesson, how one invasive species can wipe out centuries of evolution, and how determined humans can fight to keep a spark of that life alive. Fact 60. Pinta Island tortoise, home of Lonesome George, the last of his kind. Few animals have symbolized extinction as powerfully as Lonesome George. He was the last Pinta Island tortoise, a species once native to one of the Galapagos Islands. These tortoises had evolved unique shells and sizes on each island, shaped by their isolated environments. When humans began visiting the Galapagos in the 1800s, they hunted tortoises for food and oil. On Pinta Island, goats introduced by settlers destroyed the vegetation the tortoises depended on. By the early 1900s, the species was believed extinct, until 1971, when scientists found a single survivor, George. For more than 40 years, conservationists tried to find him a mate, searching every nearby island for another of his kind. They never succeeded. George lived peacefully at the Charles Darwin Research Station, becoming a global ambassador for conservation. When he died in 2012, his death marked the end of an entire lineage stretching back millions of years. Yet his story sparked worldwide awareness about endangered species. The Pinta Island tortoise may be gone, but George's legacy continues, reminding humanity that extinction isn't just loss, it's a warning we still have time to heed. Fact 61. Stella's sea cow, the peaceful sea grazer hunted to extinction. Imagine a sea creature so large it could grow up to 30 feet long, gentle, slow, and calm as it drifted through icy northern waters. That was Stella's sea cow. When European explorers first encountered it in 1741 near Russia's Commander Islands, they were astonished. It looked like a massive manatee with thick, wrinkled skin and no teeth, just bristled lips for scraping kelp. But this peaceful giant's calm nature would be its downfall. It couldn't dive deeply or swim fast, making it an easy target. Hungry sailors, whalers, and fur traders began hunting it for its meat, which was said to taste like veal and could feed crews for weeks. Its thick hide was used for boots and rope, and its fat burned cleanly in oil lamps. Within just 27 years of its discovery, it was gone. By 1768, Stella's sea cow was completely extinct. No one had ever seen such a rapid disappearance of a large animal before. It shocked naturalists and helped spark early ideas about extinction itself. Today, it's remembered as one of humanity's earliest lessons in overexploitation, a reminder that even the mightiest creatures of the sea can vanish when humans take too much, too fast. Fact 62. Caribbean monk seal, vanished due to overfishing. The Caribbean monk seal once lounged on warm beaches from Florida to the Yucatan, basking in the sun and raising its pups in peaceful colonies. Early explorers described them as sea wolves for their curious, dog-like faces and playful behavior. But their friendliness cost them dearly. Hunters slaughtered them for oil, fishermen blamed them for eating too many fish, and coastal development wiped out their breeding grounds. By the early 1900s, sightings became rare. Scientists officially declared the species extinct in 2008, the first seal species wiped out by humans. The real reason wasn't just direct hunting, it was overfishing. The fish and crustaceans that sustained them were stripped from the reefs, leaving the monk seals to starve. Their cousins, the Hawaiian and Mediterranean monk seals, are still alive but critically endangered, living echoes of what the Caribbean population once was. The Caribbean monk seal reminds us that even the calmest corners of the ocean aren't safe when greed outweighs care. Fact 63. Japanese sea lion, a victim of war and poaching. Once common around Japan, Korea, and Russia, the Japanese sea lion was a playful, intelligent marine mammal, often seen basking on rocky coasts. They grew nearly 8 feet long, with males weighing over 800 pounds, powerful, sleek swimmers who hunted squid and fish in cold Pacific waters. For centuries, they coexisted quietly with coastal communities. But in the early 1900s, they were hunted aggressively for oil, skin, and organs used in traditional medicine. Japanese circuses captured live individuals for shows, and by the 1930s their numbers had plummeted. Then came World War II. Bombings, naval activity, and pollution devastated their last breeding areas. The final confirmed sighting was in the 1950s. Despite occasional rumours and unverified photos, no solid evidence of survival has ever been found. Today, Japan honours the lost sea lion through cultural references and conservation efforts to protect similar species. The Japanese sea lion is a haunting symbol of how war, industry and neglect can erase a species without anyone truly noticing until it's too late. Fact 64. Grey whale, Atlantic population, erased from the Atlantic Ocean. The grey whale still exists today, but only in the Pacific. Few people realise that it once thrived in the Atlantic Ocean, from North America to Europe. For thousands of years they migrated along coastlines, feeding on crustaceans in shallow waters. When European whalers arrived in the 17th century, the Atlantic population became an easy target. These whales were slow and stayed close to shore, making them perfect for harpoons. Within just 2 centuries, they were gone. By the 1700s, not a single grey whale remained in the Atlantic. The only trace they left is in fossils and old sailors' logs describing their migrations. In recent years, a few stray individuals have been spotted in the Atlantic again, likely wandering from the Pacific through the Arctic. Scientists hope this might signal a possible return, but for now, the Atlantic grey whale stands as a vanished branch of a still-living species, wiped out by human hands long before we understood the cost. Fact 65. Sea mink, the largest of minks gone by fur trade. The sea mink lived along the rocky coasts of New England and eastern Canada. Larger than any other mink, it had thick reddish fur that glistened when wet, so luxurious that trappers couldn't resist it. Unlike its river-dwelling relatives, the sea mink lived by the sea, hunting crabs, fish, and seabirds along the shoreline. But its secretive habits didn't save it. In the 1800s, fur traders hunted it relentlessly. Its pelt fetched high prices, and by the late 1800s, the species had vanished. We never truly got to know it. Scientists only described the sea mink after it was gone, based on bones and old pelts. It was a creature erased before anyone cared to study it, another casualty of fashion and trade. Today, its story feels painfully familiar. A beautiful, adaptable animal destroyed for human vanity. The sea mink may have disappeared quietly, but its loss speaks loudly about how easily we can take nature's gifts for granted until they're gone forever. Fact 66. Labrador duck, the mystery duck that disappeared without a trace. The Labrador duck is one of North America's strangest extinction stories, because no one really knows why it vanished. It wasn't particularly rare at first. This small, black and white sea duck lived along the cold Atlantic coast, diving for shellfish in shallow waters. It migrated between Canada and the northeastern United States, quietly living its life without much notice. But by the mid-1800s, it was gone. There were no mass hunts, no great habitat destruction. It simply disappeared. The last confirmed sighting came in 1878 near Long Island. After that, nothing. Scientists have puzzled over its vanishing ever since. Some believe pollution or overharvesting of shellfish destroyed its food source. Others think its eggs were eaten by predators, or its numbers were always too small to survive natural pressures. Only a few dozen preserved specimens remain in museums, their colours faded but haunting. The Labrador duck reminds us that extinction doesn't always happen with a bang. Sometimes, life just quietly fades out, unnoticed, until it's too late. Fact 67. Blue buck, the forgotten antelope of South Africa. Before European settlers arrived in South Africa, the bluebuck, or blauwbok, roamed the open plains. It was smaller than its cousin, the roan antelope, with a bluish-grey coat that shimmered in the sun. Early explorers described herds grazing peacefully on the grasslands of the Cape region. But that peace didn't last. By the 1700s, hunting intensified. Settlers saw them as easy game, and livestock pushed them off their native lands. Within a century, they were gone. The last bluebuck was shot around 1800, the first African antelope known to go extinct in historical times. Very little is left of it. Only a few skulls and skins survive in European museums. Its disappearance is overshadowed by more famous extinctions, yet it carries an important lesson, that even large visible animals can vanish when their homes are replaced by farms and fences. The bluebuck didn't just lose its life, it lost its place in memory. It's a ghost of Africa's forgotten past, erased before the world even began to care. Fact 68. Broad-faced potoroo. A small marsupial lost to cats and foxes. Once upon a time in Australia, a small shy marsupial called the broad-faced potoroo hopped quietly through coastal scrublands. It was about the size of a rabbit, with soft grey fur and big eyes that shone in the dark. It spent its nights foraging for roots, fungi and small plants, a peaceful, solitary life. But when Europeans arrived, they brought cats and foxes, predators the potoroo had never known. Its gentle nature and ground-dwelling habits made it an easy target. Habitat loss from grazing and fire added to the pressure. By the 1870s, the broad-faced potoroo was rarely seen. The last confirmed specimen was collected in 1875, and that was it. No one ever saw one again. Today it's remembered as a symbol of how easily Australia's unique wildlife can be destroyed by introduced species. Scientists still debate its exact habits, but the truth is simple. It didn't have time to adapt. The broad-faced potoroo was too trusting, too slow to flee, and it paid the price for human carelessness. Fact 69. Great Caribbean flamingo, subspecies, hunted for its feathers. Flamingos are icons of tropical beauty, tall, pink, and graceful. But there was once a Caribbean subspecies, often called the Great Caribbean flamingo, that was nearly erased by human greed. In the 1800s, its feathers were in high demand for hats, dresses, and decor. Hunters killed them by the thousands, wiping out colonies across islands like the Bahamas, Cuba, and Hispaniola. Their eggs were collected for food, and wetlands were drained for farms. By the early 1900s, the flamingos were nearly gone. Some believed the Caribbean subspecies had gone completely extinct, but in the mid-20th century a few scattered survivors were rediscovered, enough to rebuild populations through protection efforts. Sadly, the original genetic line of certain island populations, like those in the Bahamas, is believed to have been lost. The Great Caribbean flamingo is both a tragedy and a comeback story, proof that nature can recover when we finally stop taking and start protecting. Fact 70. Cape Verde giant skink, lost to collectors and invasive species, on the rocky islands of Cape Verde, off the coast of West Africa, lived a remarkable reptile, the Cape Verde giant skink. Growing over a foot long, it was sleek, strong, and shimmering bronze in colour. Islanders once considered it sacred, calling it the dragon. But when European sailors and scientists arrived, curiosity turned to exploitation. Collectors captured specimens for museums, while cats and rats brought to the islands preyed on their eggs. The skink's rocky nesting sites were disturbed, and its food sources dwindled. By the early 20th century, it had vanished from the wild. Despite decades of searching, no confirmed sightings have ever been made since. Only preserved specimens and local legends remain. The Cape Verde giant skink stands as another example of how isolation breeds uniqueness, but also fragility. It survived volcanic heat and harsh coasts for thousands of years, only to be undone by a few centuries of human interference. In the end, it wasn't the island that failed the skink. It was us. Fact 71. Pallas's cormorant, the extinct bird of the Bering Sea. In the freezing waters of the Bering Sea, there once lived a bird so large and glossy black that sailors thought it looked like a crow of the ocean. This was Pallas's cormorant, a majestic seabird that could weigh up to 15 pounds, twice as big as most of its relatives. It nested on the remote Commander Islands, feeding on fish in the frigid shallows. When Georg Wilhelm Steller, the naturalist who also discovered Steller's sea cow, first described it in the 1740s, he was captivated by its size and beauty. Unfortunately, so were the sailors who followed him. Hunters slaughtered them for meat, oil, and feathers. The birds were easy to catch, nesting in open colonies without fear of humans. By the 1850s, barely a century after they were first recorded, Pallas's cormorant was gone. No specimens remain except a few preserved skins and bones. It's one of many species wiped out from the small, cold islands between Russia and Alaska, where humans arrived unprepared to share the space. The Pallas's cormorant reminds us that even the farthest corners of the world can't escape human reach and human hunger. Fact 72. Aleutra grebe. Madagascar's diving bird lost to hybridization. On Lake Aleutra in Madagascar, a small brown and grey bird once skimmed the water's surface, diving for fish with perfect grace. It was called the Aleutra grebe, a bird found nowhere else on Earth. For generations it lived peacefully among the reeds until change arrived quietly and quickly. Fishing nets began to trap and drown them. Introduced carnivorous fish devoured their chicks. But what truly sealed their fate was hybridization, breeding with other grebes that humans brought to the lake. Over time, the pure Aleutra grebe bloodline faded. By 2010, scientists declared the species extinct. No confirmed sighting has been made since. It's a heartbreaking kind of extinction, not one of fire or hunting, but slow dilution, where a species simply blends out of existence. Today, Lake Aleutra still echoes with bird calls, but not theirs. The Aleutra grebe is gone, lost not to violence, but to quiet, unstoppable change. Fact 73. Spix's macaw, the bird from Rio, now extinct in the wild. If you've ever seen the movie Rio, you know the Spix's macaw, the brilliant blue parrot that inspired it. Sadly, the real story isn't a fairy tale. Native to Brazil's dry forests, the Spix's macaw was one of the world's rarest birds even when it was first discovered. Its soft grey-blue feathers made it irresistible to collectors, and the pet trade devastated its numbers. Deforestation finished what greed began, leaving the species with nowhere to go. By the early 2000s, the last wild macaw, a lone male, was gone. For a while, the species survived only in captivity, cared for by conservationists who refused to give up. Then, in 2022, a miracle. A few Spix's macaws were reintroduced to the wild. They now fly once again over Brazil, their bright feathers flashing against the sky. The species is still critically endangered, but its comeback offers hope. Proof that even after extinction in the wild, life can sometimes return when given a second chance. Fact 74. Western black rhino, officially declared extinct in 2011. The western black rhino once roamed across Central and West Africa, a powerful, majestic animal that grazed on shrubs and leaves. But by the late 20th century, it became one of the most tragic victims of poaching. Rhino horn was prized for false medicinal claims and as a status symbol. Even as conservation efforts grew, the killings continued. The western black rhino declined faster than anyone could protect it. By the early 2000s, only a handful remained, and then silence. In 2011, the IUCN declared it officially extinct. Not one has been seen since. What makes the story even more painful is that it was preventable. We had the technology, the awareness, and the time, but not the will. The western black rhino became a symbol of how bureaucracy, greed, and apathy can destroy an entire species before the world truly reacts. Today, the remaining rhino subspecies fight for survival. Their fate depends on whether we've learned anything from this loss, or if we'll let history repeat itself again. Fact 75. Pyrenean ibex, cloned, revived, and lost again. The Pyrenean ibex, or bucardo, was a wild mountain goat that once roamed the rugged slopes between France and Spain. With its curved horns and sure-footed grace, it was built for the cliffs, but not for human hunters. Centuries of overhunting and habitat loss drove it to near extinction. In 2000, the last known individual, a female named Celia, was found dead under a fallen tree. The species was declared extinct until science stepped in. In 2003, scientists used preserved DNA from Celia to clone her. Against all odds, a cloned ibex was born, the first extinct animal ever brought back to life. But she survived for only a few minutes before dying due to lung complications. It was a fleeting, heartbreaking success, a moment that showed both the power and limits of human technology. The Pyrenean ibex remains gone, but its story changed how we see extinction. It reminds us that while science can reach into the past, it can't replace what nature builds over millions of years. Some doors, once closed, can only be knocked on, never reopened. Fact 76. Tecopa pupfish. The first fish extinct from human pollution in the US, in the hot springs of California's Mojave Desert, once lived a tiny, shimmering survivor, the Tecopa pupfish. Barely 2 inches long, it sparkled blue and silver in the mineral-rich waters near Death Valley. For thousands of years, it endured extremes of heat and salt that would kill most fish. But what nature couldn't destroy, humans did in a few short decades. In the early 1900s, the desert's hot springs became a tourist attraction. Bathhouses, motels and spas were built around the same streams the pupfish called home. By the 1950s, engineers altered the spring's flow to make them more comfortable for bathers, combining 2 separate pools into one. The result was devastating. The unique water chemistry that sustained the Tecopa pupfish changed forever. By 1970, the species was confined to a few small pools. When scientists returned to study it, they found only hybrids. The Tecopa lineage was gone. In 1981, it became the first species in the United States officially declared extinct due to human-induced habitat destruction. A symbol, in miniature, of what careless change can cost. Fact 77. Pu'uli. The last song of Maui's forest. Deep in the misty forests of Maui, a small bird with a black face and pale body once sang softly among the trees, the pu'uli. It was discovered only in 1973, one of the last members of a unique Hawaiian bird family that had thrived for millennia in isolation. But by the time it was found, it was already vanishing. The pu'uli depended on native snails and insects found only in old-growth rainforests. As invasive species, disease-carrying mosquitoes and habitat loss spread, the forest grew silent. Fewer than 10 pu'uli were ever seen alive. By the early 2000s, just 3 individuals remained, each aging, each alone. In 2004, scientists captured the last known bird in a desperate attempt to breed it. But the bird was too old and frail. It died soon after. Today, the pu'uli stands as one of conservation's most haunting stories, a creature discovered just in time to say goodbye. Fact 78. Golden toad, vanished due to climate change. In the misty highlands of Costa Rica, the golden toad once shone like living treasure. Small, radiant and almost glowing orange, it lived in the Monteverde cloud forest, one of the most stable climates on Earth. But in 1989, after a single dry season, it was gone. For centuries, the forest's moisture stayed constant. Then, rising global temperatures disrupted the delicate cloud cover. The pools where golden toads bred evaporated too soon. In their place came a deadly fungus thriving in the warmer air. Within 2 years, the species had vanished entirely. The golden toad became the first widely recognized victim of climate change, a bright warning sign ignored for too long. Its loss turned Monteverde from paradise into a cautionary tale. Even in the most protected places, no species is safe when the climate itself changes. Fact 79. Dusky seaside sparrow, lost to habitat destruction. The marshes of Florida once echoed with the raspy songs of the dusky seaside sparrow. With its dark feathers and soft whistle, it lived only along the Indian River Lagoon, a world of saltgrass and shallow water. But progress came in the form of highways and space rockets. When NASA built the Kennedy Space Center in the 1960s, nearby marshes were flooded with pesticides to control mosquitoes. The birds' nesting grounds vanished overnight. By the time conservationists realized what was happening, there were only a few left. Efforts to breed them in captivity failed. The remaining males had no females left to mate with. In 1987, the last known dusky seaside sparrow died in a cage at Walt Disney World. His name was Orange Band. With him died not just a species, but the sound of a Florida marsh that will never sing again. Fact 80. Bramble K. melames. The first mammal lost to rising sea levels high above the Great Barrier Reef, a small rodent once scurried across a low coral island called Bramble Cay. It was unremarkable at first glance, brown, furry, about the size of a mouse, but it was unique to that tiny island. Now it's gone, erased not by hunting or pollution, but by the ocean itself. As global sea levels rose through the 20th century, waves repeatedly flooded the island. Each time, more of the vegetation disappeared, the only source of food and shelter for the melames. Scientists searching the cay in 2016 found none. The last known individual had likely died years earlier. The Bramble Cay melames is now officially recognised as the first mammal extinction directly caused by human-driven climate change. It's a quiet tragedy. No headlines, no survivors, just a reminder that even the smallest creatures at the world's edge are part of our shared fate. Fact 81. The thylacine sightings. Could they still exist? The thylacine, also called the Tasmanian tiger, was declared extinct in 1936 after the last known one died in a Hobart zoo. Yet for nearly a century since, stories have refused to die with it. From grainy photos to shaky night footage, people across Tasmania and even mainland Australia still claim to have seen its striped back slip into the darkness. The thylacine once roamed freely across Australia, a marsupial predator shaped like a dog but closer to a kangaroo by birth. It hunted softly, with a stiff tail and powerful jaws that could open wider than a wolf's. But hunting bounties, habitat loss, and disease ended its reign, or so science says. Since then, hundreds of alleged sightings have surfaced. Farmers tell of glowing eyes near their fields. Hikers swear they've seen that unmistakable striped tail vanish into the bush. Even scientists admit that Tasmania's rugged wilderness could hide surprises. Camera traps, however, have never provided proof. Each blurry image or moving shadow brings hope, and then disappointment. Today, advanced technology and genetic research have even sparked dreams of de-extinction, using preserved DNA to bring the thylacine back. But whether it still walks unseen or only in our memory, one thing is certain: it has become more than an animal. The thylacine is now a symbol of what we lost, and what we still wish might be found. Fact 82. Megalodon myths. Why people still think it survives. For millions of years, Megalodon ruled the oceans. Growing up to 60 feet long, it was the largest shark to ever live, a predator so powerful it could bite through whalebone. But according to the fossil record, it vanished around 3.6 million years ago. So why do so many people believe it's still out there? Every few years, the myth resurfaces: a giant shadow beneath a boat, an enormous tooth said to be too fresh, or a viral photo claiming a massive shark near the Mariana Trench. The truth, though, is more scientific than spooky. Megalodon's teeth are found on every continent, but none are younger than a few million years. And if such a colossal creature still lived in today's oceans, we'd see its impact everywhere. Missing whales, broken boats, sonar traces. Yet we find nothing. The myth thrives because the ocean itself remains a mystery. We've explored less than 5% of its depths. That vast unknown fuels imagination. If something once so huge existed, could it really be gone? In the end, Megalodon survives not in the water, but in human curiosity, a monster of our collective longing for wonder and the fear that we still don't know what lurks beneath. Fact 83. The ivory-billed woodpecker, rediscovered or just legend? The ivory-billed woodpecker earned a dramatic nickname because people were astonished whenever they saw it. A huge bird nearly 2 feet tall, with bold black and white feathers and a brilliant red crest. It once dominated the cypress swamps of the American South, but logging and hunting destroyed its habitat, and by the 1940s, it was believed to be extinct, but the legend wouldn't stay buried. In 2004, a blurry video from Arkansas made headlines, a flash of black and white wings that might have been the ivory bill. Teams of scientists searched the swamps with drones and recorders, hoping to confirm the impossible. Some claimed to hear its double-knock call. Others insisted the evidence was too weak. Even today, sightings continue, brief, unproven, but deeply hopeful. The US Fish and Wildlife Service declared the bird extinct in 2021, yet not everyone agrees. Some researchers quietly continue their search. Whether it still beats its wings in hidden wetlands or only in old memories, the ivory-billed woodpecker remains a haunting symbol of the thin line between extinction and endurance. Fact 84. The moa sightings. Modern myths of giant birds. In the remote forests of New Zealand, legends whisper of a bird taller than a man, the moa, believed to have vanished 600 years ago. These flightless giants, some standing over 10 feet tall, were hunted by the Maori until none remained. Yet since the 1800s, stories of living moa have persisted, from giant footprints in mud to eerie nighttime encounters. Explorers in the 19th century reported strange calls echoing through the mountains. In the 1990s, hikers described seeing large, feathered shapes darting between trees. No bones, feathers, or droppings were ever found fresh, but the wilderness of New Zealand is vast and the human imagination is even larger. Modern science remains firm. There is no evidence any moa survived. Yet fascination endures because the moa represents something primal, a world not yet tamed, where ancient giants might still hide. Each rumour, each shadow, is a reminder of how deeply we want to believe that extinction isn't always the end. Fact 85. The quagga revival. Science bringing stripes back. The quagga was once a familiar sight on the plains of South Africa, half zebra, half horse, with bold stripes on its front half and a brown unmarked rear. It was hunted to extinction by the late 1800s. The last one died in an Amsterdam zoo in 1883. For over a century it was gone, until DNA changed everything. In the 1980s, scientists analysed preserved quagga skins and made a discovery. It wasn't a separate species, but a subspecies of the plains zebra. That meant part of its genetic code still survived in living zebras. So began the Quagga Project, an effort to selectively breed zebras that most closely resembled their extinct cousin. Generation after generation, the stripes began to fade toward the quagga's original pattern. Today, several animals now look nearly identical to historical photographs. They're not exact clones, but living echoes, proof that extinction, in rare cases, can be partially reversed. The quagga's revival blurs the line between past and present. It raises questions not just about what science can do, but what it should. For a moment, though, seeing those stripes return to the plains feels like time has folded back, and the lost has, somehow, been found. Fact 86. The coelacanth, the living fossil, thought extinct for 65 million years. For 65 million years, the coelacanth was believed gone, a relic of prehistory, swallowed by time alongside the dinosaurs. Its fossilized remains told stories of an ancient world, when strange fish with limb-like fins prowled the seas. Then, in 1938, off the coast of South Africa, a fisherman pulled up something impossible. A living coelacanth. It was blue and silver, its fins moving like arms, its body shimmering with an ancient glow. Scientists were stunned. It was as if a ghost from the age of reptiles had been pulled back into the sunlight. The coelacanth wasn't just alive. It had been quietly surviving in the deep, untouched waters of the Indian Ocean all along. For decades, only a few were ever seen, until more were discovered near Indonesia. They live thousands of feet below the surface, where sunlight fades and time seems to stop. They give birth to live young, can live for decades, and move with a slow, almost deliberate grace, a living memory of evolution itself. The coelacanth became a symbol of hope, proof that extinction isn't always final. Somewhere, in the deep corners of the world, nature might still be keeping secrets, quietly waiting for us to notice. Fact 87. The Lazarus Effect. Species that vanished and returned. Every so often, nature plays a trick on us, a miracle scientists call the Lazarus Effect. It's when a species we thought was gone forever suddenly reappears, alive and well, as if nothing happened. Take the night parrot in Australia, unseen for over a century until a lone one was photographed in 2013. Or the Cuban solenodon, a strange shrew-like creature that vanished for 40 years before being rediscovered in the mountains. Even the La Palma giant lizard, believed extinct since the 1500s, re-emerged on a rocky island ledge in 2007. These moments remind us how little we truly know about the natural world. Sometimes extinction is real, other times it's just our lack of awareness. The Lazarus Effect challenges our finality. The idea that once something's gone, it's gone forever. Each rediscovery humbles us. It says, maybe we don't see everything. Maybe the world still holds mysteries we've barely touched. And sometimes that thought alone is enough to keep our hope alive, that not every ending is the end. Fact 88. Why extinction isn't always forever. The role of de-extinction science. Once, extinction meant forever, but now scientists are rewriting that story. Thanks to advances in de-extinction science, we're entering an age where what was lost might one day return. It starts with DNA, the code of life. In frozen mammoth tusks, preserved bird feathers, or ancient bones, traces of that code remain. Using gene editing tools like CRISPR, researchers can potentially copy or reconstruct parts of extinct genomes, placing them into the cells of living relatives. Projects around the world are trying to bring back species like the woolly mammoth, the passenger pigeon, and even the Tasmanian tiger. But it's not just about resurrecting the past, it's about restoring ecosystems. Mammoths could help rewild frozen tundras, pigeons could balance forests, and lost predators could stabilize food chains. Still, it's not a perfect science. We may never bring something back exactly as it was. But each step forward shows us that extinction, in some cases, doesn't have to be permanent. It's the merging of memory and technology, the oldest dreams of life meeting the newest tools of science. Fact 89. Genetic resurrection. The ethical debate of cloning lost species. The idea of genetic resurrection sounds thrilling and terrifying. Bringing extinct animals back to life feels like magic, but it raises a question: should we, just because we can? Cloning technology has already shown us what's possible. In 2003, scientists briefly brought back the Pyrenean ibex, an extinct mountain goat, by cloning it from preserved DNA. It lived for only minutes, but it proved the concept was real. Supporters argue that reviving extinct species could heal damaged ecosystems and undo human mistakes. Opponents warn that it could open Pandora's box, that we might focus more on overstepping our limits as humans than on protecting what's still alive. There are also practical questions. Where would these creatures live? How would they adapt? Who decides which species deserves a second chance? In the end, the debate isn't just about science. It's about responsibility. Resurrection may give us power over the past, but the future still depends on whether we learn from it. Fact 90. How DNA banks might save the future. Imagine a library where instead of books, shelves are lined with frozen genes, the DNA of animals, plants, and even coral reefs. That's the idea behind DNA banks, sometimes called frozen zoos. Scientists around the world are collecting and preserving genetic material from endangered species before it's too late. In tiny vials kept at sub-zero temperatures lies a safety net for life, a chance to rebuild what might vanish tomorrow. Places like the San Diego Frozen Zoo already store thousands of cell samples, including from rhinos, parrots, and tigers. If those species ever disappear, their DNA could help revive or protect them through cloning, breeding, or genetic repair. But it's not just about resurrection, it's about prevention. DNA banks remind us to act before extinction happens, to safeguard genetic diversity for generations that haven't yet been born. In a world where species disappear faster than ever, these frozen archives might be the most hopeful places on Earth, quiet vaults where life, in all its potential, waits for another chance. Fact 91. How climate change drove ancient extinctions. Long before factories or carbon emissions, Earth's climate was already a force powerful enough to erase entire worlds. Over billions of years, it has flipped between ice and fire, and each time, life has had to adapt or disappear. One of the most dramatic examples happened 252 million years ago, during the Permian-Triassic extinction, when global temperatures surged. Oceans overheated, oxygen levels dropped, and nearly every species on Earth vanished. Coral reefs collapsed, forests burned. The planet became almost unrecognizable. Later, during the Ice Ages, the pendulum swung the other way. Freezing temperatures trapped water in glaciers, sea levels fell, and cold winds carved the world anew. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant sloths all thrived for a time, until sudden warming melted their frozen kingdoms. Climate has always shaped the rhythm of life. But the difference now is speed. Ancient shifts unfolded over thousands of years. Today we're seeing the same changes compressed into centuries. The story of ancient extinctions warns us. Nature can adjust, but only at her own pace. When the balance breaks too quickly, even the strongest don't survive. Fact 92. The role of volcanoes in mass die-offs. When we think of extinction, we picture asteroids or ice. But fire, deep from the Earth's heart, has been just as deadly. Volcanoes have rewritten life's story more than once. Take the Siberian Traps. 252 million years ago, one of the largest volcanic events in history. For nearly 1 million years, fire raged across what's now Russia, pouring out lava and toxic gases. The skies darkened. Acid rain fell, the air filled with carbon dioxide, trapping heat. Oceans turned acidic and suffocating. In the end, more than 90% of species vanished. It was called the Great Dying for a reason. Later, massive eruptions in India, the Deccan Traps, may have sealed the dinosaurs' fate. Combined with the asteroid impact, the world choked on ash and dust, plunging into years of cold darkness. Volcanoes destroy, but they also renew. After every fiery purge, life starts again. Different, smaller, stronger. It's a reminder that even in chaos, the Earth is both destroyer and creator, always reshaping itself, one eruption at a time. Fact 93. The Ice Age cycle, nature's own reset button. If Earth had a heartbeat, it would be the Ice Age cycle, a slow rhythm of freezing and thawing that's shaped every living thing. Every 100,000 years or so, the planet cools. Ice sheets stretch across continents. Oceans retreat, exposing new lands. Then slowly warmth returns. Forests grow back, animals migrate, and life begins again. It's a natural reset button, harsh but necessary. During the last Ice Age, mammoths, mastodons, and woolly rhinos roamed the tundra. Saber-toothed cats hunted them, and early humans learned to survive alongside them. But when the ice melted about 12,000 years ago, the world changed overnight. Grasslands turned to forests. Megafauna starved or drowned as the climate shifted. Only the adaptable and the clever endured. The Ice Ages teach a simple truth. Survival belongs to those who change. Nature's resets are brutal, but they always clear space for new beginnings. Every thaw writes the next chapter of life, proof that even endings can create opportunity. Fact 94. How humans accelerated extinction rates. For most of history, extinction was nature's doing. Then we arrived, clever, curious, and careless. When humans spread across the world, the rules of survival changed. Within a few thousand years, giant mammals like mammoths and ground sloths vanished from continents they had ruled for millions of years. Later came deforestation, overfishing, pollution, and now, climate change. Today, scientists estimate that species are disappearing 1,000 times faster than the natural rate. Every vanished creature is more than a loss of beauty. It's a missing thread in the web of life. Bees, coral reefs, forests, their decline isn't distant. It touches the air we breathe and the food we eat. But the story isn't just tragedy, it's also awareness. For the first time in history, one species, us, has the power to recognize what's happening and to change it. The future depends on whether we treat extinction as an accident or a choice. Fact 95. What we learned from the dodo. The dodo lived only on the island of Mauritius, a bird unafraid of humans until we arrived. Within less than a century, sailors, rats, and pigs wiped it out. No one meant to destroy it. No one even noticed until it was gone. The dodo became the world's first symbol of human-caused extinction, a reminder that curiosity can be deadly when paired with carelessness. It wasn't dangerous, it wasn't rare, it was just vulnerable, and it paid the price for our discovery. But the dodo also taught us something invaluable: awareness. Its story inspired the first conservation movements, the first wildlife laws, and the realization that extinction isn't just a natural cycle. It's something we can prevent. Today, every endangered animal, from rhinos to coral reefs, carries the dodo's lesson in its shadow. The bird may be gone, but its message survives. Once you take too much from nature, you can't give it back. But you can choose differently next time. Fact 96. The sixth mass extinction. It's happening now. Mass extinctions used to be ancient history, events we studied in rocks and fossils. But the unsettling truth is that the sixth one isn't in the past. It's unfolding around us right now. In the last 5 centuries, humans have wiped out over 700 known animal species, and countless more have vanished without record. Forests fall faster than they grow, coral reefs bleach and crumble, and once common creatures quietly disappear from the edges of maps. Unlike the asteroid or volcanoes that caused earlier extinctions, this one has a single trigger: us. Habitat loss, pollution, overhunting, climate change. Together, they're creating pressures no species can outrun. Scientists say we're losing life at a rate 1,000 times higher than natural levels. But here's the twist. We're also the first species aware of what's happening. That means we can choose to stop it. The sixth extinction doesn't have to end like the others. If history has taught anything, it's that life finds a way. And right now, that way depends on whether we let it. Fact 97. The importance of preserving genetic diversity. Every living thing carries a unique story in its DNA. Millions of years of adaptation written into invisible code. When a species goes extinct, that story ends forever. But when genetic diversity survives, nature keeps her options open. Think of it like a safety net. In a changing world, diversity gives life the tools to adjust, to resist new diseases, adapt to new climates, and recover from disasters. The more variation within a species, the stronger its chance of survival. Yet modern life is shrinking that diversity fast. Overfarmed crops, cloned livestock, and monocultured forests mean we're betting everything on sameness. One new virus or drought could erase entire systems. Conservation today isn't just about saving animals, it's about protecting their genes. From frozen DNA banks to breeding programs, scientists are trying to preserve the raw material of evolution itself. Because in the end, diversity isn't just beautiful, it's the reason life keeps going when everything else changes. Fact 98. Rewilding. Bringing balance back to damaged ecosystems. Imagine a landscape where wolves once again roam forests, where rivers run freely, and where birds return to skies that had fallen silent. That's the heart of rewilding, the effort to restore nature by letting it heal itself. When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone in the 1990s, something amazing happened. They didn't just bring themselves back, they brought balance. Deer populations fell to sustainable levels, forests regrew, and rivers even changed course as erosion slowed. One species reshaped an entire ecosystem. Rewilding isn't about turning back time, it's about trust. Trusting that nature knows how to fix what we broke if we simply give it space. Across the world, bison now roam European plains, lynxes stalk the Alps, and grasslands breathe again after decades of absence. It's proof that recovery isn't impossible. The world doesn't need to be remade, just released. When nature is given freedom, it remembers what to do. Fact 99. Modern conservation success stories. For every tragedy of extinction, there's a quiet victory, proof that saving life works. The California condor, once down to just 27 birds, now soars over cliffs again. The black-footed ferret, thought extinct in the wild, is back on the prairies. Even whales, nearly hunted to oblivion, are singing louder each year. These successes didn't happen by chance. They came from relentless care. Biologists working around the clock, local communities protecting habitats, and everyday people choosing conservation over convenience. It's easy to believe the damage is too big to reverse, but these stories show the opposite. When effort meets empathy, recovery begins. Each species saved is a reminder that extinction isn't inevitable, it's preventable, and every comeback tells us the same thing: hope, like nature, grows when it's given the chance. Fact 100. What extinct animals teach us about survival. Every vanished creature, from the trilobite to the dodo, leaves behind more than fossils. They leave lessons. The story of extinction is, strangely, also the story of endurance. The mammoth teaches us that strength alone isn't enough without adaptability. The dodo warns what happens when innocence meets exploitation. The coelacanth reminds us that life can hide, endure, and surprise us when least expected. Extinct animals aren't just reminders of loss, they're teachers of resilience. They show that the rules of survival have always been the same: adapt, respect balance, and never take abundance for granted. If we listen to their silence, we'll hear what they were trying to tell us all along: that every species, including ours, depends on the choices we make today. The past is written in bones. The future is still being written in us.